the product is literally everything. And the product and truly caring about the customer, so you increase the lifetime value. When you do those things really well, that's a business that can compound. And then when you just sprinkle in a little bit of marketing on top, things just take off.
I completely gutted everything and only focused on one thing that we did achieve success. So it sounds like a very similar story to what you had to go through.
Yeah, and I think it's a fallacy that I see all the time, and I can heavily identify with like people who are starting out. I see this too often where they talk about the brand or business that they're starting. They're like, this is my first one. Here are my next 4 that I'm working on. And I'm like, no, please do not.
Welcome to Built Online. I'm Cody McGuffie, and this podcast is all about one thing: building the business of your dreams. Selling art, teaching classes, starting a blog, launching a brand, whatever your passion is, we show you how to turn it into real income. I created EverBee to help anyone with a dream start and scale a business.
EverBee.
And we now serve over 800,000 creators all across the globe. On this show, we bring on real entrepreneurs who've done it. They share their secrets, they share their failures, the exact steps that you can take to get started. What if you can get one golden nugget out of today's episode, and it's the breakthrough that takes you from just dreaming to actually living a life on your terms? At EverBee, we believe that every human is a creator, and every creator should own a business. Chris, what's up, man? We're here.
We're here. Thanks for having me, Cody.
Happy to be here, man. How are you?
Living the dream, just day by day. That's all we can do, right?
I love it. I'm super excited and grateful to have you come on the podcast finally. We've talked about it for, I don't know, multiple months now at this point. And how long have we been friends? Is it coming up about a year yet?
Yeah, I think we first connected on Philip's podcast online. And then
Anders.
Yeah. And then we realized we live like 20 minutes from each other, which is crazy because everybody else is like around the world. So it's a beautiful connection.
How do you like Austin so far? You came from which city, state again? Remind everybody.
Dude, we've lived all over. PA is where I was born and raised. And then in the incubator that I lived in, we lived in Colorado, then Florida, and now here. So we've gotten
Pennsylvania, for anybody that doesn't know what PA is, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Philadelphia area.
And you have a super cool story, which I want to get to like the bottom of today and just kind of open that up for everybody listening to this, because I think your life that you and your wife are building is really special for a lot of reasons. From a business aspect, but also from like a spirituality, like just meditation, like being at peace with yourself and growing. You're one of the most awesome growth mindsets of anyone I know.
Appreciate that.
And I mean that. And I want to show everybody or kind of reveal that to everyone here. That's hopefully part of the goal, at least.
Let's do it.
You said something that was really cool. And it was in a blog. And you said the real money in any business, and you said it took you years to learn this, is in the lifetime value of your customers. It's about building relationships with them. Why do you say that?
Yeah, this was something that, as I said, took me a long time to learn, because starting out in any business, I had all the classic limiting beliefs and like self-doubt. And so for the first years, it felt like I just constantly had my back up against the wall, which kind of puts you in this weird fight or flight type mindset of like, everything you do has to be extracting a dollar. And if it's not profitable, not even like within the year or the month, but like this week or today, then you not only does it not feel like it makes sense to do it, but you physically can't, because like financially you need to make it work. And so it kind of leads, and I see this with a lot of entrepreneurs starting out, it kind of puts you in a spot where you're kind of, we all know the classic, delayed gratification type story of the marshmallow test. It almost forces your hand to do the exact opposite. And it forces your hand to do things that are much more short-term oriented, and things like optimizing for the first purchase needs to be profitable. And it makes sense, but over time, as we started scaling the brands, we started to realize that as long as we are optimizing for just the first purchase, one, it always lends itself to a very transactional business model, and the real money in any business is in the lifetime value. And exercise that really demonstrated this perfectly was if you take like the business formula of like number of customers, average value per purchase of a customer, and then number of times that customer purchases from you. Like for us, it's, say you have 10,000 customers on a brand, average order value is $50. You could get 10,000 and they buy one time. You could get 10,000 more customers and double the business. Or you could take the average order value from 50 to 100, double it, that doubles the business. Or you can I get chills thinking about it because it sounds so simple, but it was a big breakthrough because if you can get a person to buy just one more time, you've literally doubled the business overnight. If you can get them by 2 more times, it's triple. And then you double the number of customers, but that's really where, the real enterprise value is. And more importantly, it just feels like a much better business to be running.
It seems like it's more bulletproof, right? It's more sustainable rather than just like it's not just about a transaction anymore. It's about like the relationship, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And it forces you to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and think, what are they truly, like, where are they trying to get to? And then how can I help them do that? And like when you obsess over that, where they are, where they want to get to, and this applies to any business model, when you truly obsess about that and care about it with everything you're putting into the business, and then you care about that and nothing else, just good things naturally follow.
It's kind of the opposite of like the traditional, in the past at least, the traditional like drop shipping model, like when drop shipping got really, really popular, right? And we've all tried it, I think, including myself, where it's like you're just drop shipping from China, you're literally trying to get $1.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't really care if this shipping takes
6 weeks to never.
Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe never. And they're never going to buy from you again because the experience is so terrible.
Right.
But it's quite the opposite of that.
Yeah. And I think for anybody who's at that stage, the really valuable thing that you're building, I always thought it was, cash flow, email lists, that kind of thing. The real asset that you're actually building is yourself and the skill set that you're able to transpose to anything you do in the future. And so focusing on that, and it's so hard when, you need to make $1 in order to put food on the table. It's, completely understandable to focus on that and nothing else. But if you can still do that, still do it, you need, but at the same time, take a step back and realize how far you're coming and all the new skills you're building up. Because it took me until, I started talking with friends who were business owners and doing a little bit of consulting to realize like how valuable the skill set was. And it doesn't just have to be marketing or anything e-commerce related. Like you as the individual, as long as you focus on that, then you're always winning. It doesn't matter if sales are up or down.
When you say that and that skill set particularly, what are you referring to? Like what would you call that? Would you call it anything?
Yeah, I would call it like it can be a lot of different things, but I would say primarily being able to identify a target audience or group of people who have a pain point or a need or something they want, and then figure out the best medium for fulfilling on that need, and then how to allow the most people possible to learn about that in a sustainable way. And then the final piece is building a relationship with them so you increase the lifetime value. That skill set, and it varies for everybody, but that skill set doesn't matter what you're doing. If it's e-commerce, building a community, software, it's all the same thing.
What we call this at EverBee is one of our core values, and it's a pretty common thing in the tech world, is customer obsession.
Yeah.
It's like just being super, super obsessed with your customer, which is your ICP, your ideal customer profile. Like how often are you thinking about your customer? How often are you putting yourselves in their shoes? How often are you thinking about their family, their kids, their spouse, their partners, their dog, what kind of sheets they sleep in, what kind of house they live in, what kind of cars do they drive, what are they afraid of, what makes them happy, what makes them wake up in the middle of the night, what are they worried about?
Yeah.
Like that's the type of what I think what you're saying is like you should try to understand. You should always be seeking understanding deeper and deeper into this profile of this customer. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and one of the easiest ways to do that is just start a business model where you yourself are like in that group to begin with, because then you're basically able to build for yourself, and naturally you end up building for like very like deeply intertwined pain points for your ideal customer.
Do you think it's required to think of it that way? Like so deep though? Like I was saying so many detailed things, and those are the things that I care about. I think about for our customers for EverBee. But I wonder if there's like, is all that necessary? You know what I'm saying? Are the energy drinks that are like super successful, are they really thinking about this demographic in depth like this?
It's a good question. I would say, I think it depends on what the goal is. Like, if the goal is to build a business that's able to get to profitability just as quickly as possible, you're able to get away with kind of going surface level. Like, we do this a lot with like launching e-commerce brands. You can do niche research, see like what groups are most active online, what products are buying, that kind of thing. But if the goal is to build something that like can truly change the lives of your customers, then I think it's a prerequisite.
That's interesting. What are some of the brands that you've built? I want to talk a little bit about your history of success with building brands. You have a couple that I come to my mind. What are the biggest wins for you, if you can recall?
Yeah, well, there were certainly a lot of losses in the beginning, but the ones that are easily searchable online is Yoga Stay was one of them. That was a yoga brand. Then History Teas was another one. Same type of business model, but targeting like the history buffs of the world, giving them a platform or medium for expressing their interest in the topic. But across the board, we've done 8 different brands that have grown to 7 figures. About 25 million in total sales over that time. But like I said, there was tons of losses. I could rattle off a dozen failed brands as well that nobody, just hearing the name, you're like, yeah, I don't think that had much legs to it.
But specifically, let's talk about Yoga Stay or Yoga Stay. How did you say it?
Yoga Stay.
Yoga Stay.
Yeah.
Yoga Stay and History Teas. Both of those I'm familiar with. I've looked at their site many times. Like, we actually use it as reference point a lot of times for EverBee customers and stuff, which is really cool. Both of those were acquired.
Yep, by a company called Open Store.
Awesome. What does an acquisition look like for a brand like this? Also, before you answer that, just to confirm the business model of this is print on demand.
Yeah, it's print on demand. We've done everything from drop shipping, like you mentioned, to 3PL, to now print on demand. Yoga Stay was actually a hybrid where we had started off print on demand. And then I had the bright idea of, this is going so well, why don't we shake it up a little bit and add in like yoga mats, equipment, that sort of thing, and then started, working with our own suppliers.
So private labeling.
Yeah, working with suppliers and like customizing the products. So like we came up with all the designs, we chose the specs, and so at that point, kind of like white labeling, but more like actually creating the product.
Creating the products.
Yeah, and then shipping it in to a 3PL facility in the U.S., like Shipmonk or any of those, and then they fulfill to the customer. But to your question about the acquisition, I've actually done both sides. One through Open Store, and then another like going direct to a buyer, like classic acquisition. And for a company like Open Store, it's kind of an outlier. They're a business that is made for these acquisitions, like well-funded, so they have it streamlined down to a science. You basically click a button and they pull in all your data, and then they run it through some kind of algorithm, puts a valuation within 24 hours. You have a estimated value, and obviously you go through due diligence. On the other side, I've gone through marketplaces, like listing on all the classic business exchanges, and
Flippa, Acquired, Micro
Acquired. Yeah, we were on that one.
Cool.
Biz, buy, sell, all those kind of things. And what I would say, something that I didn't realize about selling a business in the beginning is that just because the business is profitable and you have a good track record, it doesn't mean that it's sellable by any stretch. And it needs to be like the right mindset to view it now is putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer. And if you were looking at this business, would you be excited about the possible investment? Would you see a future where 24, 36, 5 years down the road, you're making a positive ROI on your investment? And if the answer is no to that, then nobody's going to buy it, because the people who are buying the businesses that's exactly how they're framing it.
And they're even thinking about it in more depth because they're actually buying, buying this investment. So Yoga Stay and History Teas, can you give us a ballpark of what the values of those things were? Anything like that public?
Yeah, it's calculated based on TTM EBITDA, so trailing 12-month earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. It's basically net profit. And in the NDA, I can't say the number, but it's based on a multiple of that. And
what's the multiple typically look like for something like that, for print on demand specifically,
yeah,
e-commerce store?
It very heavily depends on the growth. Like if you're at flatline, you're looking at, like, if you're at 0% growth from the previous year, you're looking low ones, like 1.5-ish EBITDA.
So if you profit $100,000, you probably can get $100,000 for that.
Exactly. And then if you're growing at 20 to 30%, then you're looking at 2 to 3 range. And then if you're 20 to 30% plus you're at like 2 million in EBITDA, then you can get in like the 4 or 5 range. And then, like, we learned with Yoga Stay, inventory is normally just added on as like a 1x multiplier on top of that.
A 1x multiplier on top of like the cost of goods sold, like actually.
Yeah, it's basically liquidated. Yeah.
Okay. So basically they'll buy your inventory. That's what I've described to me as. Is there any difference between this business model, like print on demand, for example, it's a 1x multiplier on, flat growth, and let's call it like a 3PL, right, where you actually hold inventory? Is there any difference in the multiplier in that case?
Yeah, it was honestly really similar, because actually when somebody looks at a print on demand business, like any investor, they're looking at what are the ways that I can possibly save or like just increase margin, either because of scale that I have or additional capital that I'm able to quickly deploy to lower the cost of goods. So when somebody sees print on demand as the business, obviously the pros are there's no upfront capital, but it's much more expensive on a per unit basis. So as a potential investor, they see that as, that's a quick win for them. They can bring that in-house. So you're looking at either you can sell to somebody who already has a print facility or somebody who has extra capital they can deploy, opposed to if you're 3PL, there's a little bit less of that margin that they're able to play with. But in general, like the 2-3 transactions that we had, they were all around similar multipliers.
You living in the print on demand world for 7+ years, what you studied print on demand, other print on demand brands, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
Is there any like notable brands that people listening to this be like, oh yeah, like we didn't know that it was print on demand, but it actually is print on demand? Is there any out there that you could think of?
I would say there's a lot of brands that augment their catalog with print on demand that you may not be aware of. Like a lot of like Fortune 500 companies actually, and like movie companies and studios. You can see this by like looking at brands that are integrated with like Printify and Printful and stuff. But there's not many that are strictly print on demand, because once you get to a certain point, for anybody watching, like as a baseline for fulfillment on a print on demand brand, you're paying about $4.55 per print. This is DTG, not to get into the weeds, but when you bring it in-house, you're able to switch over to screen printing, which requires a lot more upfront capital, but the cost per print alone is down to, depending on the number of colors and the quantity, you can get it down to like $1.
Your gross margins increase.
$1.50, yeah, dramatically. Plus, then you can start buying the blanks, which brings down the cost. So as soon as you achieve any kind of scale, I would say even a couple million a year, that's what we started doing at Yoga Stay. We started screen printing everything. You bring down the cost dramatically. But then the fun learning that I didn't have until after we had already gone down that path, and we had a warehouse filled with tens of thousands of units of yoga apparel, is that it's not like you just outlay the cash up front when you're running an apparel brand. You have tons of SKUs, because the sizes times the colors times the design, that's just one product. It's not enough for you to just outlay, however much in inventory, and then you just let it dwindle down, stock up the bank account, then you reinvest on a new run. It's a constant game, because you have your best selling SKUs are dwindling down. And if your best sellers on the site are all out of stock, your conversion rate's going to plummet, then your ad performance drops. And so you end up in this weird spot where, yes, you lowered your costs on a per unit basis, but you're constantly have to have a really close eye on your supply chain, because your cash flow is just always being reinvested back into restocking the inventory. And if you're somebody, with a relatively small team like we were at the time, that becomes your life, because that's where the majority of your cash is going to. It naturally requires your attention. And so that draws your focus away from all the things that you were doing that got you there in the first place. So if I were to do it over again, I would not have moved over to that model until I was rock solid with our systems and internal processes for maintaining everything that we were doing, and then just viewing that as simply a growth mechanism that we could use when we were ready, but not jumping into it too soon.
I want to take a step back now that we've kind of talked about some of the I guess recent past achievements. You've done over $25 million in sales, right? In the past 7 years, you've hinted at some failures that you've encountered and obviously overcome because you're here today. What was like your biggest learning failure that you've kind of felt like you had to overcome in order to get you where you are today?
Yeah, it's let's say the moment that to jump to the moment that it felt like the biggest failure was, it was a couple years after I graduated from college, and I had decided 9-to-5s was not the path that I wanted to go. So I jumped in headfirst to the entrepreneurial world and fully bought into the idea that you got to spend money to make money. And so as I was spending, I thought, this is the path. This means I'm doing things right. Like contractors, like ad spend.
What was the business?
It was, at the time, it was like a marketing agency.
Okay, so you were working a full-time job, kind of typical, normal American thing to do, right? It's like go get a job first, and then you're kind of starting a business on the side. Or did you like abandon the job and then go all in on your business? Yeah,
I started at like a 9-to-5 job to pay the bills. Okay. The business started doing fairly well enough that it had well surpassed my income at the job. So that seemed like a logical point, like, all right, let's take the leap. And then it felt like this, and then just a steep decline, because fast forward a couple months, racking up expenses, grew a team that was overly complex for what I needed. Overhead, was not where it should have been. Long story short, I ended up in a ton of debt, up to about $100,000 in credit card debt. And I just remember, I was like young 20s at this point. I just remember sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, just going over all of the debt that I had. We pulled up a spreadsheet, and it was so bad that we were finding debt that like I didn't even realize I had, like credit cards that were just racking up interest. And it just felt like, looking at that, one, it was massive, bloated up. Like pride doesn't even exist at that point.
Yeah.
And two, it was like, how the hell I had all these dreams and goals. How the hell did I get to this point? And it's just like that creeping, I don't know if you know what I mean, but like that sense at like the back of your neck where it's just like building tension, and it just feels like you're looking at a doomed future and there's absolutely no path out. But then, somehow you push through and you realize that you have to, what are the options? I'm either going to continue down this route, which feels a lot like death, not to be melodramatic, but that's what it feels like, or I can choose a different path and view this as something that I'm going to look back on and be really glad that it happened, because it's going to be a really defining moment, and it turned out to be that way.
Do you feel like you were reckless with money at this time?
Oh yeah.
Or do you feel like okay? And when you say reckless, was it like reckless in the business, or reckless were you just spending like on consumer debt and like these other things?
Oh no, all the spending was on the business, reckless business spending.
Okay, so it wasn't reckless in a sense of I'm buying the cars early, I'm buying my shoes, or
no.
The fancy clothes and all this. I'm partying too crazy. It wasn't like that.
No,
it was mostly like you believe that spending money would make you more money, and so this is what you're going to spend money on in the business. But it just didn't turn out the way that you were expecting.
Exactly, because around the same time I started, I heard a podcast that talked about 7 streams of income. That's how most wealthy people get there. I'm like, well, I only have one LLC, so I got to fix something. So started launching.
Let's get 6 more.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was some kind of incubator or accelerator that had no basis or reason to be one. And so I ended up with, instead of one okay business, ended up with 6 really crappy businesses that then once the focus is split like that, and I also didn't have, like talking about the skill set from earlier, didn't have any skills. I was learning everything on the fly, had promise, but with split focus plus like rampant spending, things just can get out of hand really, really fast.
I completely agree with that. And I think it's really valuable for people to listen to this because they may be in the middle of this. Depending on where they are in the journey, it's a really common thing to go through, right? At our early stage, I did the exact same thing. And I remember having this conversation with my wife, and I'm just like, at this point, working full-time job. Also, we have this real estate investment company, and also we have an Amazon FBA brand. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, I think we should probably start this drop shipping brand too. Unrelated, completely unrelated to my other.
You're diversifying, right?
Diversifying. But this was like reasonable. And she actually, with and she wasn't doing like reading all the entrepreneurship books and all this stuff, but she just had the wisdom to be like, I don't think that's probably doesn't really make sense to do that. And I'm like, pride, or maybe it's ego that creeps in. I'm just like, I can do everything.
Yeah.
I can do it. And it turns out like absolutely not. I had a similar financial, which I shared with you privately. Same thing. It was like we were focused on 5 things and we were below average on everything.
Yeah.
And we looked like we owned a whole bunch of businesses and LLCs and all this stuff. We looked kind of successful, I guess you could say, but the reality was we were crumbling.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I completely gutted everything and only focused on one thing that we did achieve success. So it sounds like a very similar story to what you had to go through.
Yeah, and I think it's a fallacy that I see all the time, and I can heavily identify with like people who are starting out. I see this too often where they talk about the brand or business that they're starting. And they're like, this is my first one. Here are my next 4 that I'm working on. And I'm like, no, please do not. Because it makes sense, like when you think about it, but then
it's very logical.
Yeah, it feels like hedging your bets. It feels like the safe thing to do. Like if this one doesn't work out, then I'll have these backups. But it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By hedging the bets in that way, you're actually guaranteeing that this thing is not going to work, rather than splitting, and giving some kind of idealistic opportunity that, one of them is certainly going to take off.
What's a better way to frame it for them? Because also this person who is very ambitious, is very excited about what they're doing, but they actually don't know what their end game is yet. But they just know that like, oh, well, first I'm going to start this business, and then I'm going to probably sell that business. I'm going to work on this business, and I'll probably sell that business. I'm going to actually do this.
Yeah.
I was there. You were there. Now we cringe when we hear somebody talk like this because first of all, none of that is easy.
Yeah.
One business is extremely challenging.
Right.
So the fact that you're already moving on from the business that you're currently trying to build,
yeah,
is almost guaranteeing that you're going to fail.
Yeah.
But they're not wrong for thinking that. So is there a better way for them to be thinking about this and explaining it to themselves?
I can share the way that I reframe it for myself now, is that by like the concept of like diversifying into different businesses, it comes from fear, right? It comes from fear of like, if this thing doesn't work out, then at least I'll have these as backups. And where that fear comes from is like the fear of failure. And I would say that the reason that it's scary, the idea of failure, is that, leading into starting a business, everything else that we've been taught in our life, like everything from being in grade school to college to your job afterwards, failure is not really acceptable. People pay lip service to like failure is how you learn and stuff like that. But like you fail on a test, you get in a lot of trouble. You fail in college, you get in a lot of trouble. Fail at your job, you might lose your job. And entrepreneurship is the first time, at least in my life, where fundamentally failure is actually rewarded because you are the boss for the first time in your life. In school, you have a teacher. In work, you have a boss or a manager. In entrepreneurship, it's the first time that failure is rewarded, and also you are the manager. You are the person dictating what you should be doing. And so the diversifying comes from like out of fear of failure. What I say now is like, I can guarantee you're going to fail, but failing in the short term is infinitely better than failing in the long term. And I can guarantee that if you split focus now, it's going to be mean failure for the long term. And if you focus on one thing, you're able to compound those failures like over your lifetime until it turns into a win. When you diversify it, you just have these micro failures that they compound against you, but they don't start compounding in your favor at all. So it's consolidate the learning around one thing and reframing it. Instead of the asset being the business, the asset is yourself being built. And after I realized it that way, then it's allowed me the freedom to openly fail on one thing for a long enough period of time until it starts working out, opposed to diversifying focus. I think that's the final thing that I see too often is people see the business is the asset opposed to themselves.
How does somebody invest in themselves? Like, what are the things they need to be investing in themselves right now if they actually want to start their first successful business? Maybe they've had 1 or 2 failures in drop shipping, print on demand. Maybe it's a local service. Like, how do they know what to focus on next?
I would say the first thing to focus on is actually fixing yourself. 95% of the time that I talk to people with their business and they say that they have a business problem, it's not actually a business problem at all. It's something with their mindset or how they're showing up in the business. And the the cool thing is that it's micro things that they're able to improve that yield.
What's an example?
Like just fixing your sleep. Like if you are, and people like, it gets a lot of lip service and people almost brush it off like, I need to sleep. Obviously, like I'm an adult, I know that, but it's like, no, you don't get that. Like if you, like an example I give is I played ice hockey growing up, and when one game I forgot, I was a goalie, and it says a lot. And one game I forgot my goalie stick, and so I had to use just a normal player stick, which is massive difference. Okay. You're screwed pretty much. And that game I let up a ton of goals, obviously. And I came off the ice and I was hard on myself, and I started ranting about how I should have saved that, should have saved this. And my parents were like, well, Chris, you didn't have your stick. Like, obviously it didn't work out. And I'm like, I know, but like I've spent all this time practicing, and like I know how to save that. Like I should have. It's like, no, you didn't have the right equipment. And when people talk about like how they're showing up in their business and they're like, yeah, I'm not sleeping, but like anyway, it's like, no, you are fundamentally screwing yourself from the outset if you don't get started with that. And so whenever you hear somebody ask a question, or basically the people that I've seen have the most success the fastest are the ones who have the strongest mindsets, and they're the ones who are able to be the most objective and focus on taking the feedback from the market, from coaches, from whoever, and take it as not a criticism in any way. It's your only path to growth. And when they embrace that and they combine that with doing the small things consistently right, and they're able to show up every day, focus on, it gets said a lot, but 1% better a day, that's truly the place to get started.
I agree. Yeah, it's like get up, make your bed in the morning, get your 8 hours of sleep would be ideal. I feel like fitness would be another thing that's always been pretty core to like my life, as far as like if I'm typically having a hard time mentally, or maybe even in the business, like we're just struggling financially with the business in the past. It's like if you actually just look back 90 days, what have I been doing in the last 90 days? Like, what are the habits?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've only worked out probably like 1 day a week on average, maybe less, Okay, well, I meditated 0 times, in the last 90 days. No wonder you're a little bit screwed up mentally, right? It's like if you're not even doing these things that you know are the right things to do for you, then how could you expect the results to be any different?
Yeah.
And also, like, I think people struggle a little bit too with just understanding what skill sets they need to focus on. Like, is it marketing? Is it product? Is it understanding like the market even better? But really, it comes down to you are the biggest asset. Yeah, and I think that's a challenging thing for someone to grasp, because it's the first time they've heard that or thought about it.
Yeah, and especially as a solo founder, you are the business. So that's why these things, like sleep, doing all the little things right, it's a non-negotiable. And I would say like a big evolution that I've had when I was starting out compared to now is when I would have downtimes in the business, or I was getting frustrated or having emotional responses, the response or like the circumstance, it was directly coupled with how I was showing up, but I just didn't realize it at all. Now, whenever things start, not going the way I want or not growing as fast, the very first thing that I check is exactly what you said. It's bring it back to like, what have I actually been doing recently? And it's like, am I showing up with the wrong stick? Then what the hell did I expect to happen? And then, not taking it as taking it as a data point, and then it's an opportunity for improvement and getting excited about that.
Sometimes it's like your limiting beliefs kind of creep in naturally, right? Like we have these, I've been thinking a little bit negative the past 90 days.
Yeah.
So it's going to manifest into your personal life and also your business life. It 100% will.
Right.
So you have to check it.
And that's also not you, right? I think a lot of times we couple our thoughts and like our emotional responses with ourselves and think that that's like who we are, but it's really not. Any behavior or output is very trainable and it can be corrected. Like choose who you who you are. That's step 1. Step 2 is deciding who you want to become. And then step 3 is coming up with a plan for that. And then step 4 is realizing the plan's going to go to shit 1,000 different ways, and that's okay. The important thing is that you keep
trying to execute the plan.
Yeah. And then back to your other question, like make things even more tangible. Like I would say the number one skill, at least from my experience, that helped me the most was learning the marketing, because it lends itself to the product side. Because when you have a fundamental understanding of like marketing and like how to choose a market of people that you want to serve with, how to get a message in front of them, what that looks like in terms of scalability, and basically what's possible. It almost leads you naturally to realize that the product and what you're actually putting out there is everything. One of my favorite quotes is that great products can be sold by bad marketing, but great marketing can't sell bad products. And from that evolution of like focusing on just like, it was all marketing through all the different stores we ran and brands, like everything was about the marketing. And that skill set was ultimately what led us to realize like the product is literally everything. And the product and truly caring about the customer, so you increase the lifetime value. When you do those things really well, that's a business that can compound. And then when you just sprinkle in a little bit of marketing on top, things just take off.
When you launched your brands in the past, but specifically like Yoga Stay and History Teas, what was the approach that helped you identify those are the businesses I'm going to start? Like, did you take an analytical approach? Is this more of a gut feeling? Were you identifying with those groups? How does somebody start a business like that, considering they don't have any of those skills that you've had yet, or that you have now?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to validate any business idea. Those brands are no different. It's build a landing page. If you're doing e-commerce, build a Shopify store. Very basic. Don't even have the products or any of the fulfillment.
EverBee store.
Yeah, EverBee store. There you go. Any landing page, ClickFunnels, if it's software, doesn't matter. And then drive traffic just using like very basic Facebook ads. Set aside a couple $100 budget. Doesn't have to be much. And then see what the response is on the page. And that's the complete opposite from what we used to do. We used to have an idea, build out this big, beautiful brand, spend weeks, if not months, invested into it, and then we go to market. We're like, all right, now let's hope people like this. Instead, you can just reverse that equation.
What does this page have on it, for example? So it's a landing page that, let's say I want to test out. I mean, would you run multiple at one time? So one is a yoga brand, one is a History Teas.
One at a time.
Brand, one at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long would you give it until you kill it?
3-4 days.
3-4
validate.
days.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would this page have on it?
It's just a landing page with the products, if we're talking about e-commerce specifically.
Yeah, so e-commerce specifically. So what kind of products? Like, would it be, like, let's say shirts, for example?
Yeah.
So you actually connect like back-end, Printify, something like that, and actually have the products live?
You can. The way that we move the fastest is we would take a look at the market and see what people are buying, what are the design styles, what are the types of quotes, and all of that kind of good stuff, all the classic research.
Okay.
And then we would, at the time, we would quickly work with designers. Now you can just use AI and take your best stab at, coming up with something the market would like. And then you just put them all up on a EverBee store, and then you launch Facebook ads.
Cool.
And then within, literally a weekend, because you don't even need to see the sales data, we were just looking at the cost per click. Because if cost per click is low, it means that people are interested.
And when you say low, like in today's world, what would that be?
Like 50 to 75 cents.
And then that would tell you that, okay, people actually are responding well to the specific products.
Yep.
And we know that it's an indicator that you have a good business here.
Yeah. And we did the same thing for validating like different product types. Like we did a socks brand where we weren't sure if, graphic designs on socks was going to be a thing, if people are interested in it. Mm-hmm. So rather than going to a manufacturer, sourcing all of it, stocking shelves with, tens of thousands, if not more, in inventory, we just did exactly what we talked about. We threw up a quick landing page, filled it with some products that a designer made. None of the products actually existed yet, and drove traffic to see what the cost per click was, and it worked.
I like this. I've always loved like the validation first, like through, especially with paid media too. EverBee, I don't know if I ever told you, but EverBee was started that way too.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, I had this like hunch that like this is obviously a problem that specifically Etsy sellers had for EverBee research, be particularly that product. But I threw up a landing page while the product was being built.
Nice.
Because I just didn't want to like waste too much time. And I threw up a landing page, and then the call to action was basically like get a free download of a bunch of researched products that I manually did on a Google Sheet.
I love that.
And I just like gave it away. But I just figured if I can get people to actually click on this thing, actually take this download and actually like it, man, imagine if I make it like the experience like literally 100 times better with a piece of software.
Yeah.
And then you kind of you have to take some leaps of faith, which is like, will somebody pay monthly for this and all that other stuff. But it was a big validator for me, for sure.
And that gets back to what we were talking about before with, people when they're starting out, most terrifying moment in the world when you're starting a business is going to market and seeing if this your baby essentially that you've invested all this time and money and energy if people actually like it or not, if people like your kid. And in the beginning, people drag that process out a lot because it's, they tell themselves, and I did the same thing. I told myself that this is me caring about the brand, this is me being a good business owner, this brand is going to be different. And in reality, none of that was true. What was true is that I was just trying to put off the inevitable, which was going to market and getting normally the tough feedback that there's a lot of work still to be done. And I think over time, reverse that equation, get to the hard part right away, because you know that once you do that, then the easy part becomes so much more worth it.
Completely agree with this. When you think about marketplaces versus owning your own site, which is, if I were to look at like Chris Heckman, his YouTube channel, right, and your community in school, and your courses that are for free, which we could talk about all that stuff, it seems like you're the opposite of, hey, go launch on Amazon, go launch on Etsy. You're like, hey, freedom, ownership, control, scalability. Like, you're thinking from that approach first versus the other way, eventually coming here. Why do you think that is?
Well, I can say the reason that I continue to do it, the reason I started with that is that that's what everybody in the incubator that I was a part of for years, everybody started there. And so I kind of got lucky in a lot of ways, but I'm at a point now where I certainly don't have to continue doing it. I continue doing it because I truly believe it's the best and most sustainable way to build a long-term brand. Because when you're on a marketplace, not to say there's no opportunity there, but in all reality, it's not building a real business. A business is a sellable asset, something that you could hire other people to run, and eventually, investors would be interested in acquiring, where you own the customers, you own the transactions, everything is yours. When you're on a marketplace, the easiest way to tell is, where does the cash flow through? Who owns that? It's Etsy, it's Amazon. Whoever owns the cash flow owns the business. And aside from that, also, who owns all the customer data? Again, the marketplaces. And if we're building, I think it's a great way to build some cash flow if you're trying to make an extra couple $100 a month. But the other thing is, you're beholden to those companies. They can choose to kick you off at any time because they care about their customer centric too. If they think for whatever reason, and it doesn't have to be a reason you agree with at all, you're gone. And I've seen too many stories of people that work, pour their heart and soul into a business for 2 or 3 years just to get, snapped away overnight, and then they're left with nothing. Opposed to building your own standalone, you own all the customer data, you own all the marketing data, you own the future of the company is essentially in your hands. And it's, yes, there's a learning curve, but the way I would frame it is if you take Etsy or Merch by Amazon, what do they have there? They have a sellable, a high converting site. They have a traffic source, and they have a customer base that comes back again and again. All of those things you're able to recreate building your own standalone. And then once you do that, which learning curve people think is a bad thing, but it's really a competitive advantage, because learning curve means that it's more challenging to get started. As soon as the barrier to entry is on the floor, then that means naturally the market becomes flooded, supply surpasses demand, and then the opportunity goes away. And we're seeing those trends already. And the final thing is, when somebody buys from your brand, you want, and they're wearing your product or using it, and their friend sees it, and their friend says, "Oh, I like that. Where'd you get that from?" Do you want them to say the name of your brand, or do you want them to say, "Oh, I got this from Etsy"? Where do you want them going back to? Because that conversation right there, as nuanced or minute it might seem as a detail, that's the thing that compounds. And it can either be compounding for you, or it can be compounding for a marketplace.
In 2025, do you feel like there is more opportunity or less opportunity for print-on-demand standalone site for that brand owner? You think it's more or less? Is it trending up or down?
Yeah, I've looked into this a lot. I think there's more opportunity than ever, because the data would support this. And the reason that that's the case is, for any business model, you have to go to the very end point. Look at the consumer. And what is the person who's buying from these print-on-demand shops? Are they buying more, less, or the same than they were yesterday or a year ago? The trend is like that. It's
so to break it down to one person, Give me a buyer name, a persona. Let's call him or her
Cody.
Yeah. What am I buying more now than I would in the past? Am I buying that like funny shirts for my dad for Father's Day?
Yeah.
I'm buying also one for my mom for Mother's Day. Yeah, I'm doing that more often now.
Yeah, so it's fast fashion and it's graphics or like the two, like graphic themed apparel. Those are the two major trends. So fast fashion is that a decade ago, people, you would buy a really nice shirt that was expensive and it would last for years and years and years. Nowadays, fast fashion, people are buying higher quantities of cheaper quality that they're turning through more than ever. Then at the same time, people are buying not the shirts that you and I are both wearing. They're buying things that are like an expression of themselves. And my personal anecdote or theory on this is that I think around COVID, like you hear about like the loneliness epidemic. I think people now more than ever are looking for alternate route. They feel lonelier, more isolated, and they're looking for more routes for expressing themselves. And so the experience from the consumer side is when they get hit with an ad for something from History Tees and it has like a joke and a historical reference that is like pretty niche that only it feels like only they get it, and they see that. When somebody buys your shirt, they're not buying the shirt at all. What they are buying is how it's going to make them feel when they put it on. They're buying the reaction from their friends and family when they see it. They're buying the community that it makes them feel more connected to. That's what they're actually buying. And so the question of like, is there a future for print on demand and like how's the opportunity look? It's like start with those consumer behaviors, and do you see that trend declining, flatlining, or increasing over time? And I think it's just at the very beginning. I think especially with AI, it's going to become, people feel more and more isolated, unfortunately. And I think print on demand can be a fantastic way to mend some of those wounds.
Not to mention we're just talking about t-shirts right now, right? But print on demand is extending. It has extended actually way past t-shirts. Yeah. Mugs, shirts, pants, like shower curtains, and all that stuff will probably just continue to increase also. So it's not just going to be the traditional print on demand shirts.
Yeah, and also like print on demand is just the fulfillment model. It's not actually a business or anything. It like you could have like Yoga Say started off as print on demand, connected to Printify, the classic thing, and then as we grew, it switched to 3PL, which at that point anybody would call like a real business. It's not print on demand.
Sure.
And it looked exactly the same. Consumers coming to the site, identical to what it looked like a week ago. The only difference is on the back end. Now the orders is getting sent to a warehouse instead of
I think
printer.
People are afraid when I ask that question. They're like, well, it seems like print on demand is opening the gates, lowering the barrier to entry for a whole bunch of other competitors, they would say, right? It's a very limiting mindset.
Yeah, it's kind of the point.
Right. But they're also like, well, yeah, I want to do a yoga brand, but like probably a whole bunch of other people want to do yoga brand too, and they have access to the exact same products that I do and for my inventory. So then they kind of like, they're trying to make sense of that in their head. And what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that a shop is only differentiated by the products. A brand is differentiated by you. And there's a big misconception about brand. Whenever people hear the word brand, they immediately picture Nike, Apple, and they think brand equals multi-billion-dollar corporation. And between where I am and the word brand, it's billions of dollars in enterprise value, when in fact the exact opposite is true. For History Tees, for example, the branding started the moment that we changed the order confirmation email from the standard, your order's on its way, congrats, to we rewrote it using like old 18th century English to be like, it sounds corny and cheesy, but the history buffs love it. Yeah. So it's things like your shirt, the town crier is espousing like the exciting news of your garment's preparation. It's being carried on horse-drawn carriage on a velvet pillow, like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's just one example that took 20 minutes to write. Mm-hmm. And that's the start. Like when somebody receives that email, that's the start of a brand. And that starts with you, the individual. You don't have to do, old English, but for Yoga Say, we sent emails that no sales, no nothing, not even a product attached, just here's your daily reminder to just breathe, or here's your daily reminder that you matter, and take a moment for yourself today. Those little moments, those are the ways that, like, back to the lifetime value, those are the things that take that number from a 1 to a 2 and build into something that can really compound in your favor. But it also feels much better running a brand like that.
I want to switch gears a little bit to what you're working on now, and to understand like what's the thing that most excites you for you and your business in 2025. You have a lot of interesting things happening. One I can think of is your YouTube channel. If you don't know, Chris has an amazing channel full of free information all about building brands.
Thank you.
Like one of the best, and I mean that. And also like a free community and a free course, and it's like all this amazing stuff for free. Is that the thing that you're most excited about, or is it like your software platform that you're building also serving print-on-demand folks?
Yeah, I would say both. I would say the most fulfilling thing that I've worked on in my career has been everything on the community side. I actually started out making content about 7-8 years ago, because I love teaching. I love helping people go from point A to point B, and I just had no idea what I was talking about. So I was like, should probably call this quits, actually learn the stuff. So took a hiatus for 7 or 8 years, racked up some sales, made a bunch of mistakes, and then came back. And the reason that it's the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done is after I sold the first business, those were the goalposts for years. I was like, this is going to be it. Once I've reached that point, I expected to feel bliss, ecstasy, or whatever. And instead, I opened up the Chase app, saw the wire, hit the account, and felt absolutely nothing. And that sent me for a real tailspin for a little while. Yeah. So I was like, what is this all about? And then reverse engineering it, realized like what I was actually after, my biggest why was to help people, like the people closest to me, my friends, family. And I realized that the thing that motivates me the most is being able to play even the tiniest of roles in somebody achieving something for themselves that they themselves didn't see as possible. And having all the experience now to actually help people do that and making it all for free. And then, that's been amazing.
Tell us about Mystic POD.
Yeah.
What is Mystic POD for someone who has no idea what this is, what you're building?
Very simply, it's the tool that I wish I had all the years that I was building brands. Is everything is about the product at the end of the day, and the product in print on demand, it's all designs. And that design process used to take us weeks of research, back and forth with designers, massive Trello boards that would give you a headache, and all of that to get 50 designs on your store. And then you launch 49 of those do terrible. One of them does well, and you're right back to where you were. More weeks, thousands and thousands of dollars. And the barrier to start that business and really be successful with it was pretty high. Now with Mystic POD, we're basically taking all of the lessons that we've learned about print on demand and applying it to a tool that is allowing anybody to go from getting started just with a niche in mind to creating your first 100 high quality, extremely sellable designs in a matter of minutes. And it costs an absolute fraction of whatever you're used to.
So if I target real estate agents, right, for my brand, and I just sell like merch, and I sell, or maybe not merch, but like designs that are like funny for real estate agents, that like inside jokes, right? I could go into Mystic POD. What would I type in the search bar?
Real estate agents.
Real estate agents.
Yeah.
And then what would I expect after I push that button?
You would expect results that are taking the top design styles for your niche, as well as coming up with the concepts, like the slogans, the inside jokes, the terminology that they use, and then overlaying it with the design styles that it sees as the best, medium for that. And then that's just the very beginning. Then it starts with that as like your canvas, and then you're able to start iterating on the designs, which that's what we do is, you start with your initial base, your best shots essentially. You see what actually sticks, and then you go back and you say, this one did well, what else can I do with it? And that was the process that used to involve Trello boards, all that kind of stuff. Now it's click a button, explain what you'd like to scale about it, how many designs you want to do, and within literally 30 seconds, you have a whole new collection.
I love that. What's the long-term vision for Mystic POD? Like, you guys have been building it for how long now?
About year and a half, 2 years.
What's the long-term plan there?
Yeah, the long-term plan is like, how Amazon, they started, their ultimate goal was building a massive supply chain network, and they started with books. the reason we start with T-shirts specifically within print on demand is the future of the world is AI, and I think that there's a massive opportunity to be creating AI models that, back to the consumer piece, bridge the gap and the loneliness epidemic and help people feel like there's another avenue of self-expression for them out there. Just the way that we get there or the vehicle is through the sellers and empowering those sellers to serve those consumers. And at the same time, it's empowering sellers who want to change their lives, who want to impact their family, their friends, and really build something for themselves. We're the tool that allows that to happen and makes it readily available for anybody. And not just talking about shops, but building real brands.
I love that. What do you think about the person who right now is like, oh, AI is so cool and I love it that it helps me. But I'm also like, in the back of my head, I'm like, again, is this just like lowering the barrier for everybody to compete with me? For example, in real estate, like all these designs, I just created these super quickly. But what about my competitor who's also in real estate too? Like, aren't they going to do the same thing? And aren't they going to do the same thing in times 100? And is it going to just quote unquote saturate the market to where I am meaningless brand?
Yeah, well, I would say it depends on where you're trying to sell. Like if you're talking about marketplaces, that's where you're always kind of fighting a commoditized game, and it's just a matter of time. But when you're building a real brand, that's where, again,
goes back to the brand.
Exactly.
Touch points and different things that actually make it unique.
It's spot on. And AI is coming, whether if we like it or not. So it doesn't, like years ago, everybody made designs by sketch and paper. Then, Photoshop came along, and then Canva came along, and now AI has come along. And so it's just going to continue. But the true differentiator, like the barrier to entry is definitely lowering, but the true differentiator is you. And even having tools that makes it feel like you're infinitely powerful and you can make whatever you want, there's still, you can still make really bad designs with AI. It's definitely possible, as good as they are. And making great designs is just the seed for a great brand. And so it's not the complete picture. So I think there will always be space for like human innovation in the brand, and that's what really stands out.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a good time to switch over to rapid fire questions. So you ready?
Let's do it.
What's your favorite business book?
Atomic Habits.
James Clear?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that was really the most fundamental shift that I've had in my development has been in how I show up and just making life easy for myself. The one line that stands out in my mind, and I play it over and over, is make good habits visible, make bad habits invisible. And I think when you do that consistently, it makes, the discipline that's a necessity for being successful in business, it makes it very, very sustainable. I think when a lot of people struggle, it's because they're constantly surrounded by an environment that is always fighting against them. And anybody, doesn't matter who they are, nobody's Superman or Superwoman. If you're in that kind of environment, you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle.
What's the worst advice you've ever received about business?
That you should spend you should spend as much money as you're making so that you constantly feel like you have to make more money and scale faster. Horrible.
I've heard that advice too, actually.
Yeah.
I remember having this conversation with actually a number of people, to be honest. And then they'd be like, so you guys like profitable or like you're not profitable, et cetera, typical business conversation.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, we're profitable, and they're like, then goes into like what margin, how much, and all this stuff. And it was like it would be a high amount. And they'd be like, why though? Like, you need to be investing more into growth. And I'm like, I feel like we are, but like I'm not willing to sacrifice. But the reaction is like almost like a habit, because you kind of what you're saying, people feel like for some reason in our world, we feel like profit is like you're almost being complacent.
Yeah.
But it's actually the opposite in my head. Like you're bulletproofing the business so you can play the very, very long-term game.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think it's important to do both, but just, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's I think it depends on the individual, definitely. But a really, really good business, it should be extremely profitable. The businesses I had early on, it felt like an incremental game. It felt like there was peanuts to scrape together on the first handful of brands. But now having really rock solid businesses that really get the customer and really deliver a ton of value and has a high lifetime value, you should be making so much profit that you're not really sure what to do with it.
I feel like we've normalized this as a business culture a little bit to like always bet the farm. Always over and over again. It's like, oh, you made 30%. Oh, you need to invest 30% this month, like roll it back into the business, baby, And it's like, no, actually you don't always do that.
Right.
There's a time where you need to do that for sure. But there's actually most times you should not be doing that. Like you shouldn't bet the farm more than like you do at the beginning when you first started the business.
Yep.
Don't stop betting the farm. Like if you just make one mistake, you're going to like lose everything you built. So I kind of want to change that stigma a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Run profitable businesses. If your family and your friends and coworkers in this case, or your employees, had to get together and they had to write an honest article about Chris Heckman, and you weren't allowed to be in the room or around them when they got together to do this, what kind of characteristics would they describe in that article about you, good and bad?
He's got a head so big, no hat will fit him, like physically.
Physical head size is large.
The circumference is crazy.
I wouldn't write that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm right here, and I can't see that.
I would say, hopefully they would say that he cares a lot and is extremely driven, but on the bad side, driven almost to a fault, where there's no breaks. There's no downtime, and it probably seems like there's no point that he's able to like take a step back and kind of enjoy what's being built. I think that would be the number one thing, and also they would say good and bad side, that there's nothing that if he pictures it in his mind and like once he sets his mind to it, there's absolutely nothing that he doesn't fully believe that he can actually get to. For good and absolutely for bad. Like once his mind is set to something, he's just all in on it. But also hopefully that the reason he does everything is for those people who are writing the article right now.
I see that. I see in you as like you're a great servant leader. Like you lead from example. You're here to serve people while you're on this earth, your customers, and also your team members, friends. That's kind of what I see in you. I imagine they'll say the same thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
How would you define a creator? What is a creator in 2025? Is it only in content? Is it in business? What is it?
I would say that a creator is somebody who has a idea or concept or something in their life that can be unique to them or valuable to them. It can take a lot of different shapes and sizes. And they put it out into the world. And they're not afraid of breaking the traditional mold of, like, there's creating and then there's duplicating. Very different things. I think a creator, it's fine to build on, obviously stand on the shoulders of giants. That makes sense. But a creator is somebody who takes that and then they take it a step further in their own way. And they're not afraid maybe they are afraid, but they do it anyway. They're not afraid to put it out there into the world and see the response. And then that response then fuels them to create even more and to build further. And they know that it's a never-ending game and they could build for their entire lives and still not be done.
And so what I didn't hear is it's not specifically around anything particularly. Like it's not an artist as a creator only or a content creator, which is I know the common thing now. It's literally, it could be across any vertical.
Yeah, that's it. That's accurate.
Awesome. Who do you think should be a business owner and be an entrepreneur?
I would the common trait that I've seen amongst people who have been the most successful as entrepreneurs, they don't have to be the smartest. They don't have to have the best background or come from a wealthy or successful family. It quite simply comes down to the people who have the highest tolerance for pain and stress. The people who are able to get up each day when it feels like the world is falling down around them and everything that they've been creating is falling to crap and still do it anyway. and a lot of times still do it with a smile on their face because they have to for their team that's looking at them or their family that they're supporting while they're building this. Those are they're just built different. And I think it's something that you can grow into, but it's definitely, like, I've seen extremely intelligent people fail at it. I've seen people that are average intelligence. So it's really not the traits that everybody would normally associate with it. I think it's mostly that piece right there.
Is there a world where everybody could be a business owner?
Depends on the business. I don't know about everybody. I think there are some people, and I don't think everybody should. I think everybody should do what makes them happy, as commonly said as that is. But truly, like, the reason that I build a business, and I'd imagine why you do, is that it makes me happy. And I feel like I'm growing every single day and that I'm becoming the best version of myself. And I can see a future where I'm able to have impact that I want to have, and I'm able to, support the people I want to support. And building a business is just the medium for that. And I think it's one of the best mediums for people who really care about personal growth. But then there's people on the far end of the spectrum that are just thrilled to, read a book and just spend time with family. And I think that's great. And so for that kind of person, it's seeing, basically look at how they feel about their life. And if that person is happy with how things, like, genuinely and truly, and not lying to themselves and like, I'm just fine, but they're just pushing stuff deep down, not that kind of thing, but somebody who's truly happy, definitely don't start a business.
I would argue that people listening to this right now, if you're listening to this, for God's sakes, an hour and a half in, you 100% should be a business owner.
Yeah.
Like, at this point. If you're fascinated by these conversations, then it is clear that you have something inside of you that says, okay, I want more for my life. I want more for my family. I want more for my future. And I want to make an impact of some degree. I remember thinking about this once in a while when I was first starting out. Like, am I really built for that? It's like, people would talk about, right? Like, you got to be built for this. You got to, like, think this way. But the reality is you question it a lot.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's very clear. Oh yeah, you're definitely built for it because of X, Y, Z. But in the moment, you don't know. And so I guess I would encourage, if anybody's listening to podcasts like this, 99.9% you're built for it. You do need to take the steps now. Like, you need to walk the path. And the path is rocky, it's windy, it's dark, it's unclear. But 99% of the time, it's worth it, as long as you just don't stop, essentially.
Yeah.
I do feel like everyone should be a business owner that wants to be, like, that has some sort of calling to it. And I'm not saying that you need to be a full-time entrepreneur, a full-time business owner. And today you don't need to be full-time. You can have that if you're really passionate about this job that you have and you love your company. That's awesome. But I do think that you should have a business, whether it's print on demand, digital, whatever it is, because if you're not, you're probably sacrificing some of your potential that you could be growing into, because you grow quick, you grow faster than anyone else when it's all you on the line. Yeah.
It's like stepping outside as long as you're in your comfort zone, you're not growing. As soon as you step out, that's the day that, like, you start, like, the growth process happens, and either you're growing or you're dying, essentially. So anybody who feels stagnant, or basically if you're somebody who's had the idea or the notion, normally that's, like, the truest part of yourself that has that idea, that thinks, even for a split second, maybe I could do this. Maybe I should start a business. But then normally it's our grown-up or adult self that's like, no, like, we have bills, we have responsibilities.
Totally. They kill it so quickly.
Exactly. And it's like, where did the childhood, like, dreaming and creativity, where did that go? Why did that get beaten out of us at some point?
I completely agree. And I think it's a problem, personally, because I see so many people with so much potential and dreams and creativity that they could be bringing to this world, that they actually want to bring to this world, but they let fear knock a couple times and say, oh, well, you have kids now, so, like, you can't, like, hey, like, don't take that risk. You've already passed, that window's closed for you. You have kids, you have a wife, you have a family, you have a mortgage, you have car payments. And I would challenge that completely and say, that's exactly why you need to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally the reason why you need to do it now, because your kids are looking at you. And what kind of parent do you want to show up for them as? Do you want to be the parent who, yeah, I had dreams, dad had dreams, mom had dreams, but she sacrificed them all for me. That's a scapegoat, I think. And I
Yeah.
think putting that on your kids is not a good thing. I think you need to say, you want your kids to say, yeah, mom and dad, they had us, they had responsibilities, but they did it anyway. And they were scared. They still did it anyway. They take action even when they're not scared. So that way, when they have a problem in their future, when they have a question, they would answer the call the same way.
Yeah.
That's my view.
I completely agree. And it's the nicest or the best unexpected benefit of starting a business is over the long term, the impact, not even financial or any of that, the impact that it has on the people around you that you care the most about. Like when I got into this, I was thinking just financial impact on the people around you. But now what I've realized is that the real benefit is on the emotional. You're essentially able to be a beacon or, if nothing else, you're able to be an example for other people of a different way, a way that is not normally, a way that the exact opposite is taught to them their entire lives. And just that alone is extremely powerful.
I completely agree with this because so many people do not have any examples in their life.
Yeah.
And if you can be that one example, even if you're not even quote unquote like successful millionaire, multimillionaire, like
yeah,
that's just a number. That's the point is like being that, I guess, beacon of hope is where you're kind of going with that of,
yeah,
hey, Chris did it a different way. Uncle Chris did it a different way, right?
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about, at least for me. At the end of the day, is like the people that you're able to impact. And when you care about that and nothing else, LTV goes up, business value goes up, and
finances go up too. You eventually have more cash in the bank and you can actually help more people and give back to more things.
Absolutely.
It's the cool thing about it. It's a lagging indicator that works really well. Chris, where can people find you, learn more about you, get closer to all the things you talk about?
Yeah, so just on my YouTube channel, if they're interested at all about print on demand, if they're up for it, there's a 31-hour course completely for free. It's not just me talking the whole time. My lovely wife and business partners in there as well as some coaches that we have. But yeah, that's where they can find me. Just my name on YouTube.
Awesome. And then Mystic POD also?
Yep, mysticpod.com.
Perfect. I'll drop the links for all those things for anyone listening or watching this in the show notes or the description. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I appreciate you.
No, thank you, Cody. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. We'll do it again soon.
Hell yeah.
Cool.